going on, guys? Aldo here, or Swiss, from Team Natachi, and I'd like to welcome you guys again to RC Drift Tuning, and this week's episode 3, which is going to focus on advanced front end alignment and how to tune for it and how to adjust it. So let's get right into it. So now that we covered the basic alignment video, now let's move on to the more advanced setting. And so if you haven't checked out the basic alignment video first, I would highly recommend you do that and then hop over to this video as it's the next step up. So starting off in front of us, we have 3 different knuckles, each from different brands, but the tuning aspect and how to set things up all apply to each one of them, even if they don't have similar settings or adjustment points. So starting off, for the first one, these are Rhino Racing Shark Knuckles, and then next up from that is going to be these wrap-up knuckles, and then the final is going to be what most of us know, which is the Yokomo stock plastic knuckle. And so for this video, I'm going to be bouncing around from the wrap-up knuckles, mainly just because they have the most adjustment for the 3 segments that we're going to be going over, which is KPI, trail, and scrub is universal, as that's just an offset. So let's get right into it. And so the first segment of advanced front end alignment is going to be KPI. So I'm sure you guys have heard about people talking about KPI, racers, or even other drifters who have some baller chassis, right? They're talking about, oh, I adjust this on the knuckle, or I adjust this, or even when you're looking online and you're looking at hop-up parts and you see a knuckle like the ones that Yokomo provides and it says KPI adjustment or kingpin adjustable, that's what we're going to be talking about for this first segment. And so to start off, KPI is the offset of the top stud comparable to the bottom stud, right? And so on these wrap-up knuckles, I have 2 holes on top and 2 holes on the bottom. So I could have either neutral KPI or I could add KPI. And Wrap-Up also sold a adjustment piece where you can add a spacer to increase KPI even more. And just like these shark knuckles that have 2 holes on top, 2 holes on the bottom for adjusting your KPI, same applies to every knuckle that has this. And so it's not to be confused with camber. This is solely tuning for KPI. And so many newbies who buy a beginner chassis such as a Sakura D5 from 3 Racing stock, it comes with these knuckles. And so many may think that, oh, well, I just want to change more camber, less camber. You're going to change on the hole on top. But that is not the case, right? So it's not to be confused with camber. This is solely going to be for KPI. So KPI will change the progression of the camber in combination with the caster throughout the steering stroke. So this is a compound element of camber, caster, and KPI, but to keep it real simple, KPI prevents the front tire camber to become excessive and negative or positive. So for KPI on the leading tire, this will add positive camber at full lock or leading up to your full lock. And so at neutral, which is just static facing forward, let's say you have -7 camber, when you progress through your steering stroke, you're going to reach a flat patch, and then after the flat patch, you're going to be going into positive camber. And so many tracks, what they like to tune for is maximizing front end grip, which is getting rid of KPI and making sure that your flat patch is at full lock. And so this isn't right or wrong tuning, it's just more or less preference. For me, I don't tune that way, and so I like to have a little bit more camber, adjust my KPI, and so I have a similar feel on the front end, but I am not increasing drag by increasing that surface area. So I'm running the edges at full lock, and the only time I have a flat patch is approximately at around 45 degrees, maybe 50 degrees. And so the same thing for the trailing tire. at static, let's say you have -7, your camber will not increase throughout the stroke as the trailing tire. And so if you didn't have any KPI, it would increase maybe a degree, maybe 2 degrees, as said in the previous video. But with KPI, it's not going to do that. So this really is an important way to tune, as if your driving style really depends on having a little bit more camber for a more stable front end feel and a little bit more quickness. So how do you adjust KPI? So just KPI will require a specific knuckle, so not every knuckle will work. For instance, my Yokomo knuckles do not have KPI adjustment, maybe very, very little, but if anything, you cannot adjust how much you gain, how much you lose. And so specific knuckles, just like my Rev Ds, where they have the top hole for the adjustment here, or even the Shark knuckles, where they have it as well, the 2 holes on top and 2 holes on bottom. And these knuckles, you can't buy extensions or add-ons. You can make your own, obviously, but they don't sell them. And so for a different company, just like Wrap Up here, these are the knuckles, they sell an extension plate. So you could connect to the top holes here, and you could even increase KPI a little bit further than you would just by using these stock holes. And so changing KPI would require changing the length of the upper and lower arm and your steering linkage, and also Ackerman on your slide rack, bell crank, and whatnot. So this is why KPI really is a little bit more of an advanced front end alignment setup, and most likely it's just going to be trial and error until you find what you like. For me personally, when I'm tuning my car and finding what I really prefer out of the front end, it takes maybe 10 track days or so to really find out what I want out of the front end to respond to my servo setting, my gyro setting, and how I want the mechanical front end to react. So it really just going to be trial and error until you find out what works best for you. So why do you need KPI? Well, KPI is to avoid the excessive amount of camber, both negative and positive, when the tire, as the steering progresses from neutral to a specific angle towards full lock, right? So as noted in the basic alignment video, it's how you use the tire contact patch, as our tires are just hard plastic, and so using too much of the edge can pull the chassis to one side, and so in one direction, and having too much grip on the other, on either the leading side or the trailing tire. And so you got to find a really good balance. So by using KPI, you can set the camber, let's say like in this case, -7, -9, and the negative camber on the trailing tire can be kept consistent until full lock. And so you're not increasing grip, you're not decreasing grip, and so this trailing tire is being kept consistent, and your lead tire is gaining camber. So final setting and preference for you is really just up to your tuning and testing. And so as noted, you're going to need specific knuckles, with different holes. It can be either Wrap Up, Shark. I'm pretty sure nowadays everyone's going to be leaning toward the Shark or a Yokomo brand, or even use a Rev D version of these knuckles. But I highly recommend tuning with KPI, as it could really increase the driving feel and keeping your car consistent with low angle up to high angle. So next up from KPI, it's going to be trail. And so trail is pretty tricky, and not many people use it or even know about it, as nowadays knuckles have just gotten simpler, and some, just like these Wrap Up knuckles, people just don't use them. And so trail is the offset of the tire axle relative to the kingpin. And so trail will add stability to maintain the direction the chassis is going, but too much trail will make the steering sluggish. So trail has a similar effect as adding more caster, but adding extreme caster makes the tires lean too much at full lock. And so you could add trail and reduce caster to to maintain stability in the front end as a good combo, instead of having less caster and having a more sensitive front end. And so this is a good viable option to use instead of suffering, so to speak, with a car that doesn't have front end stability. So this is just another way to tune the front end and find what you like. And I know that other knuckles similar to these, such as these older Yokomo ones, where they have trail adjustment, no KPI, but they do have trail adjustment. You could try that. And the stock plastic YD2 knuckles, you actually have trail pre-installed. So this longer one on top is going to be the top knuckle. And so stock, it would actually be leaning forward or leaning backward depending on your caster setting. And so I know that MST has it, but MST, what they do is that they, instead of having the adjustment holes on top and or on bottom, they actually have spacers to move the bearing forward or backwards. So in theory, you're just moving the axle forward or backwards. So it's the same principle, but instead of using the holes, you're using the axle. So trail wasn't really that hard. Out of these three, the last one now is going to be scrub. And so scrub is the distance of your kingpin, or the top stud, in relation to the middle or center of your wheel. And so what does scrub do? So scrub just dictates how much the front tires move in relation to your steering radius. And so the more scrub you have, the more the tire will have to travel. And not only will it make the tire look a little funky at full lock, but too much scrub will drag the front tire as you steer and makes the chassis unstable. And so a good example of a properly tuned scrub would be from any Yokomo model, which has the 8mm hex, and wheel offset can be around 6 or 8, and the scrub is just spot on. So movement and overall function is just made to a T. And so less scrub is better. Most times I wouldn't really increase it. I mean, if you see some guys with these 12mm wheels, and you could kind of feel that the car is understeering and oversteering too quickly, the front end is not stable, and thus you don't have balance, right, in the front end throughout your steering radius. So that's a good example of what not to do. What to do would probably be get 5 to 8mm wheels, stick to your stock hexes, and just keep it from there. And if you feel that the car needs a little bit more stability and mid-angle to high angle, maybe increase by 0.5 millimeter. I know Yokomo sells little spacers similar to these. You just put it behind your wheel, on the hex, on the axle, and you increase your offset. With the basic and advanced alignment videos for the front, I would really just recommend spending time dialing it in and see what you like. Going off of these videos is really just a recommendation and a simple outlook, kind of like a little cheat sheet. There's no real guidance that I can give you, as everyone's setup is different. I mean, for instance, on my TTO2, I'm just running a regular Power HD servo, the Air Racing hack slider gyro. And so this setup, the way that this drives, is going to feel completely different as opposed to if I used a RevD servo or even a Yokomo gyro. And so you really just have to go by feel, and also go by how the car's acting and your personal style. So next up, episode 4. Hopefully it gets enough traction these past few videos. If not, then I'll just do a couple videos on these cars. My cars, the TTO2, the Yokomo, the Mini that I'm building here, little Mini 225, 3D printed, and also my wrap-up Travis. And so I'll also get into steering and gyro geometry, which is also called lever ratio, and also how that affects gyro movement according to your servo horn. And also, most likely in the future, I'll get into why some knuckles have a higher mounting hole and some have a lower hole. So thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe, like, leave any type of comment or question you want down below. And yeah, catch you guys next time.